It's October 8th, 1871 in Chicago, Illinois. The air is dry and the city is about to burn. This isn't just any fire, it's one of the deadliest in recorded history. Before it's over, 300 people will lose their lives and over 100,000 homes will be turned to ashes. Walking through this nightmare is 13-year-old Bessie Bradwell. Her face is black with soot and her eyes wide with terror. As Chicago burns around her, reality sets in hard. She is utterly lost. Her family, her brother, her parents, all missing in the chaos. As the city succumbs to the flames, Bessie finds herself completely alone. Every direction she looks, another part of her world is engulfed. The fight for survival is on, and for young Bessie, time is running out. Chicago has always been sunny, but by October 1871, it had witnessed record-high temperatures with only an inch of rain over several months in a row. To make matters worse, the city was built up of wooden houses, which now seemed rather like a haystack. One small spark and a disaster would prevail. As smaller fires had already been observed, Robert Williams, the chief fire marshal, begged for more funding for equipment and more personnel for the department. The mayor of Chicago turned down his plea. Just a day before the Great Chicago Fire, a lumber factory and 4 city blocks were destroyed. The entire fire department had worked relentlessly for 17 hours straight until the fire finally ceased. This exhausted the city's firefighters, who returned home relieved that they had managed to stop the raging fire. However, neither the firefighters nor the residents knew they would be facing something far worse. Among others, there were Chicago's longtime resident, the Bradwell family. James Bradwell, a judge and close friend of President Lincoln, his wife Myra, who ran a prosperous newspaper agency, and their 2 children. On the evening of October 8th, Chicago was calm, and people were enjoying a slight breeze. Bradwell's 13-year-old daughter Bessie and her younger brother had fallen asleep at their mansion close to Lake Michigan. Until around 9 p.m., they were awakened by the sounds of shouts and the smell of smoke. House by house, the whole neighborhood was catching fire. The long-awaited wind had turned demonic, spreading sparks unimaginably far. In any other case, the river could have saved the other part of the city, but not this time. The fire crossed the Chicago River twice, once at the main branch and then at the North Branch, continuing its destructive path far and wide. For the Bradwell family, who lived a mile from the barn that first caught fire, the initial distant flames were a horrifying signal to leave home. Quickly, Bessie's parents made a plan. Bessie would accompany her father to his office to rescue his valuable law books, and then they would meet her mother and brother at a lakeside park. So, still disoriented from sleep, Bessie got out of bed and put on her best clothes, hoping to save them. Her mother, Myra, was frantically packing the family's valuables into her suitcase. James, Bessie's father, collected the family cash and tucked it into his jacket. Within minutes, they were ready to leave the house. Smoke had filled the streets. You could feel a stinging sensation in your eyes. The throat became dry and scratchy in mere minutes. The coughing wouldn't stop. James told Myra and the children to go east along Washington Street until they reached a green area by Lake Michigan. If the fire had to get down there, the family at least had a chance to wade into the lake to save their lives. James himself planned to go to the courthouse first to salvage some of his precious old law books he had collected over the years. Bessie wanted to go with him, so the family split up, Bessie and James heading right toward the fast-approaching flames. Once they had the books, James told his daughter to wait as he went to search for a carriage. And so, Bessie waited. 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes. She found no sign of her father approaching, but the fire was spreading quickly and was already hundreds of yards wide. Bessie knew that if she waited a minute longer, she would be burned alive. But was her father still alive? At just 13, and all alone in the chaos, Bessie was filled with utter fear. She ran towards the lake as fast as her tiny feet could carry her. desperately hoping to find her mother and brother there. "Oh, poor prisoners, they burn alive, locked in their cells," cried a man in the street desperately. It was a shocking experience for the 13-year-old girl who was all alone. Suddenly, she heard two familiar voices and recognized them as close friends of her parents. They immediately recognized Bessie. "Follow us," the couple said, leading her towards the bridge to cross the Chicago River. Meanwhile, when James returned with the books, Bessie was gone. At first, he thought she must have gone to her mother, but when he reached the lakeside, Bessie was not there. James began to fear the worst. Maybe some burning rubble had fallen on her and she got trapped. Maybe. Myra, knowing her little girl, tried to calm him down. "I believe in our daughter. She'll make it." When Bessie and the others finally reached the bridge, a shocking sight awaited them. The bridge was in flames. There was no time to think. People were crossing despite the unbearable heat scorching their skin. The pain had to be the last thing on their minds if they wanted to survive. Bessie's jacket caught fire several times, but she was lucky. People behind her put it out with their bare hands. She heard one of the men cry, "It's the end of Chicago." But Bessie, with a determined voice, answered back, "No, it'll rise again." These were huge words coming from a 13-year-old in such a dire situation. At that moment, Bessie realized she had dreams, a home, and things she loved here. She wouldn't let those dreams succumb to dust and ashes just because the fire raged on. The police freed the prisoners to prevent them from burning alive. Refugees who had crossed the bridge felt safe on the pier, but their relief was short-lived. A burning ember fell into the park, igniting the grass and quickly spreading to people's belongings. With no other choice, people plunged into the muddy water, struggling for hours to avoid both drowning and catching fire. As if that wasn't enough, fire tornadoes, rare and highly dangerous, started to appear. Vortexes filled with whirling fire, smoke and ash, with temperatures reaching over 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit. They were dangerously close to everyone in the water. One wrong move that day, and you could find yourself in a fiery vortex, burning alive, with no way to escape. They lost all the belongings they had managed to save just hours earlier. James had been smart enough to bury his, but now he cared about none of it. His only thought was, "Where's my daughter?" The fire lasted for 2 days and burned down a third of the city. James was worried sick about his daughter and felt terrible for having allowed her to come with him. What if his love of books had killed his daughter? After all, even water couldn't save everyone who reached it, and knowing there had been fire tornadoes all over. After the fire ceased, James wandered through the remains of the city, yet there was no sign of Bessie. He was desperate. As a last resort, James stood up at a town meeting held right after the fire to ask if anyone had seen her. Silence. Then a stranger stood up. "Your daughter is on the other side of the river, and she carried a large, heavy book with her." James could finally breathe. "That's my daughter." Upon reaching the West Bank, the Bradwells finally found Bessie. "Bessie!" James cried out, his voice quivering. "Daddy?" The little girl sprang into motion as she ran to her father with the book in her hands. "Look, I saved it, Daddy." Bessie Bradwell had saved a subscription of Chicago Legal News, founded by her mother. She went on to attend law school, got married, and took over running her mother's newspaper. She lived in Chicago her entire life until she passed away at the age of 68. The Great Chicago Fire, which raged from October 8th to October 10th, 1871, left 300 people dead, over 17,500 buildings destroyed, and nearly 100,000 residents displaced, making it one of the most devastating urban fires in American history. But within the decade, Chicago had been almost completely rebuilt, with laws to make the city safer from fire. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget, hit that like button and subscribe for more incredible tales. And let me know in the comments, what other stories you'd like to hear. Thanks for watching, and until next time, stay safe.